Tonight, Health Minister in desperate move to secure release of 45 dialysis machines meant for Korle-Bu Teaching Hospital that has been detained by private provider over the hospital's indebtedness.
The Korle-Bu Teaching Hospital, in consultation with the Minister of Health, has initiated discussions with FMC for review of the current contract for more flexible payment options and a more structured supply of consumables to avoid excessive delays and to ensure delivery of the outstanding 45 dialysis machines and auxiliary equipment.
And we tell you why some kidney patients are tonight disappointed with the Health Minister following his statement to Parliament.
I didn't hear or see any, policy direction talking about tax waivers or what government or authorities are doing to make sure we have a lot of the machines in the system.
Plus more from Parliament, where the minority have been accusing government and the Health Minister of poor leadership on the matter.
The problem at Korle-Bu Teaching Hospital, I see it as leadership failure. I see it as government not being responsible for the health of the people of this country.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Vodafone. Tonight, Health Minister Kwaku Adjumamenu is desperate to secure release of 45 dialysis machines meant for Korle-Bu Teaching Hospital that have been detained by a private firm over the hospital's indebtedness. The Health Minister was today in Parliament and disclosed a bit more about this contract with the firm, a South African company, Fresenius Medical Care, for the supply of dialysis machines to the hospital. The Minister told Parliament that Korle-Bu was expected to exclusively source their consumables for the machines from SMC. Korle-Bu is indebted to this particular firm to the tune of 4 million cedis. As a result, 45 of the machines that were billed to be released to Korle-Bu have not been released just yet. The hospital 5 months ago was forced to shut down the renal outpatient department after accruing a 4 million cedi debt to FMC. Now, the Health Minister, Kwaku Adjumamenu, told Parliament approval has now been given by the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, to pay that 4 million cedis debt and has started the processes to renegotiate its controversial contract. We'll hear from the minority pretty shortly as they criticize that contract. But here is the Health Minister.
Korle-Bu has accrued a total debt of a little over 4 million Ghana cedis to its partner. Furthermore, it remains a fact that the current charge of 380 cedis for dialysis is insufficient to enable the RDU to generate enough revenue to fulfill its full obligations under the contract with FMC, especially as it does not have a hedged exchange rate per annum regime. This has compromised the ability of the RDU to raise the funds required to pay for consumables procured from FMC promptly. Mr. Speaker, again, due to the high incidence of patients requiring dialysis, the total cost of care keeps rising, adding to the accumulation of debt. Mr. Speaker, it must be noted that currently patients on dialysis are not on the National Health Insurance Scheme. Mr. Speaker, the Korle-Bu Teaching Hospital, in consultation with the Minister of Health, has initiated discussions with FMC for review of the current contract for more flexible payment options and a more structured supply of consumables to avoid excessive delays and to ensure delivery of the outstanding 45 dialysis machines and auxiliary equipment to boost the service being rendered. Mr. Speaker, in the meantime, the RDU has been opened to the public since Monday, 6 November 2023, to add patients as directed by the ministry. The MOH has since made a request to the Minister of Finance to settle the total indebtedness of the 4 million Ghana cedis. And the good news now is that the Minister for Finance has just approved the disbursement of this 4 million to support our patients in Korle-Bu.
Well, the minority side in Parliament today focused on that controversial contract that Korle-Bu Teaching Hospital signed with a private firm, the South African company. Muntaka Mubarak, who is a leading member on the minority side on the Health Committee, was emphatic that deal is the source of Korle-Bu's challenges.
And commit the country and commit the facility without the knowledge of the ministry and even advice from the Attorney General and the Minister of Finance, you will leave us to the kind of challenges that we are having. I'm sure if we are able to do
on that matter, don't we have a judicial decision? As long as the agency is responsible for paying for the facility, we cannot clog them. Don't we have a judicial decision in that respect, if I recall correctly?
Well, Mr. Speaker, that's what has got us here. Because then Korle-Bu go to sign on your blind eye. Now they cannot meet the commitment, and they are crossing the center, and they are calling now for the Minister of Finance to come and build them. Because if they can pay, we wouldn't have had all these challenges. But because they've gone to sign something that they can no longer now meet its requirement or meet its payment, that's why now they are running to the Minister of Health, and the Minister of Health is calling for Minister of Finance and all of us to build them. But if we knew what they were going to do, probably we would have advised them, no, don't go for a closed contract where it is only the supplier that will give you the consumables.
My colleague, parliamentary correspondent Kweku Asante, is in the studio with me. Kweku, the minority, they were not excited about government's handling of this matter, even after they had the health minister.
Yes, we heard from Dr. Sebastian Sandare. He's a member of the health committee. He says the health ministry had sat aloof for this situation to compound. He believes if the health minister had taken some practical steps to deal with this issue, Korle-Bu Teaching Hospital and the healthcare system will not be here.
The problem at Korle-Bu Teaching Hospital, I see it as leadership failure. I see it as government not being responsible for the health of the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, all I'm saying is that there's no priority for the health of the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, go through the statement. Apart from what the minister is proposing now in terms of policy, we haven't seen government intervention in this instance, apart from what FMC that has donated dialysis machines to Korle-Bu and the First Sky Group that has taken it up to offer free services for renal patients. Before now, I don't see, or the minister has not demonstrated or shown us what government has done so far until now. We cannot have a situation where the whole government comes in only when there's crisis.
And Kweku, the cost of dialysis treatment at Korle-Bu was also front and center today. The minister himself admits the 380 cedis that patients currently pay at Korle-Bu isn't enough, and so Korle-Bu is constantly in debt. Muntaka Mubarak will not accept that.
Yes, Muntaka Mubarak actually does a comparative analysis. He cites some hospitals across the country who actually charge less and makes the point that if Parliament is to accede to the request from Korle-Bu to increase that, it will have a cascading effect. He actually does not believe even if you give Korle-Bu that amount of money, it will fix their problems.
If you take, for example, the fees and charges that we gave, 380, yes, over the period, there may be some challenges, what we call exchange rate difficulties. But Konfanoche is operating with the same 380 and they've not closed the unit. Yes, I will agree. Konfanoche has, I think, about 10 machines, but largely you go and you have between 2 to 8 that are working at a time. But Konfanoche is operating with that. If you go to Brekum, where you have the Catholic hospital, even though this house gave a fees and charges of 380, the Speaker, they are charging 350. They are charging 350 and they are able to operate. Now, when you go to the private facilities in Kumasi, we have about 4. The one that I remember very well is what we call KNUSC Teaching Hospital, and then is it God is Love, another private facility. Mr. Speaker, they are charging 500. Remember those who are charging 500 who are private facility, they pay their nurses, they pay their specialists, they buy their consumables, they do all that, and they charge 500 as private facility. Now you come to Korle-Bu, where it is the state that is paying for the specialists, the state that is having the what you call the infrastructure, and all the nurses and all of that, they are making us believe that the only way Korle-Bu unit can operate is to charge up to about 900. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy the minister himself acknowledged that contract with FMC needs to, they are looking at it. That is where the problem of Korle-Bu starts.
And some kidney patients were there in the gallery today to listen to the health minister.
Yes, two of them, Thomas Khan, and then the president of the renal kidney patient association, Kojo Bafo. But Thomas Khan is not really enthused about some of the policy outlines that the minister announced in the House today. He wanted to see more in terms of breaking down dialysis machines. Remember, he does his dialysis treatment at Cape Coast. He says so many of the machines have become faulty. He wanted to hear something about that and of tax waivers.
I didn't hear or see any, policy direction talking about tax waivers or what government or authorities are doing to make sure we have a lot of the machines in the system. Because, for instance, you go to Korle-Bu, they have more than 300 patients, and the machines there are just 15. And from my checks, even out of the 15, only 13 are functional. Same way you go to Cape Coast Teaching Hospital where I do my dialysis. Out of the 13 or 15 machines, now we only have about 5 that is functional. And even the 5, I would say 4.5, because there's one that when you're on the machine having your dialysis, someone has to be there pressing. So that is also a challenge. So I was hoping to hear that the minister was going to talk about tax waiver so that the cost of dialysis will come down. That didn't come. And again, also talk about the policy of how to even replace the machines in the system. Because the machines are just like any other gadget, which has a lifespan. So if it is 5 years or 10 years, what is the policy plan to replace them when they break down? And this is the problem that we are facing now. You go to the various dialysis centers, the machines are breaking down, or some have broken down, even reducing to the number that we have on paper that a particular unit we can even attribute to. So this is one thing that government or the minister should come again and then see what can be done about it.
So the dialysis unit at Korle-Bu now remains fully opened. The 4 million cedis the minister announced today, the finance minister has given approval for that to be paid, but the question still remains. Korle-Bu will still be accruing debt over time until a sustainable solution is found to it. The minister attempted to give a roadmap towards achieving that particular objective. So an objective that will ensure that Korle-Bu doesn't return to a debt accruing institution when it comes to the renal unit. Listen to what he proposed.
To forestall the recurrence of this unfortunate situation, the ministry, in collaboration with Korle-Bu and the Minister of Finance, is considering one of the following options: the possible inclusion of dialysis on the National Health Insurance Benefit Package, the granting of subsidies based on proposal received from Korle-Bu, and the possible review of the tariffs to ensure sustainability of the services. And Mr. Speaker, it may interest you to note that the private health facilities charge between 800 and 1,300 Ghana cedis for just a session of dialysis. The decision on the options enumerated above, Mr. Speaker, will be announced as soon as practicable.
Joining me now, a CDD fellow, Kwame Sapona-Sedu. Kwame, thanks for your time here on Top Story.
Thanks, Ivan, for having me, and good evening.
Also joining me now is Muntaka Mubarak. He is a member on the Health Committee on the minority side. He was on his feet today vehemently raising some issues, particularly with the contract. We'll come to that. But Muntaka Mubarak, very quickly, you just had the way forward, the sustainability plan, if you want to call it so. Will that solve the problem permanently?
No, not at all. Not at all, because if you are talking about inclusion of the what do you call it, kidneys and maybe related diseases onto the health insurance fund, you are simply going to collapse it. I mean, if you check currently what is on the list and the fund that comes with it, especially with the capping, which today I'm so happy that my colleague from Survey also, Honorable Dr. Also Efrie, clearly said it, which we've been calling over the years, that it is inhumane to cap the health insurance fund. Today he himself stated that that is really barbaric, because that is really affecting the operation of the health insurance fund. And with all those challenges, and then you want to add the terminal cases like kidney, liver, and other things, or other cancers to it, you are simply, preparing the health insurance fund to collapse. So we need to holistically look at it, because, for example, if you have support to Ministry of Health, if you ever have the formula for health insurance, just take over the years. It's just growing and growing and growing. And you are at a point where they take over 200 million every year from the health insurance fund to support the Ministry of Health in terms of ambulance, in terms of killer diseases, that's immunization. They do malaria control. They do all manner of things from that fund. If you add this to it, yes, we'll have to find solution to it, to how to deal with this once and for all. But putting it on the National Health Insurance in its current state, I'm sorry to say, will just lead to the fast collapse of the fund, and to bring us back to ground zero. So it is something that we all need to look, in a very realistic way.
And Kwame Sapon-Sedu, so the minister lists 3 interventions down the line. This is not something they've implemented. This is something they are considering. 1, inclusion of the dialysis, the treatment as part of the NHIS package. You just heard there Muntaka say that is not feasible. Then it says a review of the charges, what people currently pay. And then, of course, he believes looking at this also must include a certain conversation around subsidies. These 3, will any of that work?
Well, thanks, Evans. Yes, if your memory serves you, we had a discussion on this very platform, and there were 5 things that ran through. The first one was that the taxes on consumables should be taken away, and the second was that the fee that was being paid did not meet the cost of dialysis, and that the unit wasn't breaking even. Then there was consideration around the NHIS and it going on the NHIS, and which, like Muntaka said at that forum, I did say that the NHIS scheme lacked the fiscal space to take anything on with the capping and all that. So the next thing was that the capping must go. So yes, apart from the capping must go and the lack of fiscal space, the minister listed the other 3 as possibilities they are looking at. For me, the devil is in the detail. And what do I mean by the devil is in the detail? We have the budget coming up in a few weeks. It would be interesting to see if the conversation around taxes on pharmaceuticals generally and on consumables for renal dialysis specifically are dealt with. And I say so because a lot of the products that are consumables are specific for dialysis. It's not like you can use it for anything else. So the taxes can be taken off. But the bigger question becomes, being in an IMS scheme where our tax ratios are all over the place, if the government takes it off, where do they plug the hole? And is it humane for the government to say that because we cannot find a plug for this, we are going to retain it, and for the dialysis cost to go high and high, because obviously the exchange rate is also on the mind of its own? And then finally, there's something interesting the minister said that I don't think a lot of people have taken cognizance of, and that is they were in negotiations with the company for realistic payment plan and also to release the 45 dialysis machines, which is a good thing. But the downside to it is if the 46 and 45 dialysis machines come upstream, more consumables are going to be required. And if more consumables are going to be required and a funding stream hasn't been put in place, then the debt is going to get bigger. Because if 15 is giving us 4 million, you must be thinking that the 960,000 a month that is being said that Korle-Bu are accruing based on the 50 machines is going to be times 3. Where are we going to find the money from? So we need a very serious conversation. And that's why, Evans, I keep telling people who want to listen that when I listen to statements like this, I just don't listen. I try to look at the intent. What is the long-term plan? And if you listen to it around Cape Coast Teaching Hospital and other things, and now Konfanochi is also saying they need more machines, then we have a bigger problem across the country. And that is why when we come to these conversations, I hear Muntaka, and what he's saying is true that you get Ken UST and other places do it at 500 cedis. But I also push back to Muntaka and say that is going to change unless the taxes are dealt with. And so we need a serious conversation around this. And that is how I imbibed the minister's statement. And that was why I wasn't amused at the end of the day.
Muntaka Mubarak, that contract, and Kwame Sapasuri is right, 45 dialysis machines detained, obviously because of the debt. But the minister announced today there is a review in progress. What the review will eventually produce, nobody knows. What do you want to see at the end of this review?
Well, Evans, first, I want to see the contract itself as the health committee will request it, because we need to see what was in the contract. 2, one of the things that, even though we've not seen the contract, we are told it's part of the contract, is that it's only that company that can give us those consumables. They are giving us a machine that they are the only people who can give the consumables. And I said that is where the problem is. Because that of Konfanochi, they are able to buy in the open market. That of Brekum, they are able to buy in the open market. That of KNUSC and others, they are able to buy those consumables in the open market. And to add to what my friend was just saying, removing the tax is one thing. But if I were to implement this, my strategy would rather be to support local pharmaceutical companies to produce those consumables. Because it is the only way that you can find lasting solution to it. Because even if you take the taxes, let's assume for every $100, consumable, the tax is say maybe $25, and you take off the 25, leaving still the $100. What it means is that as our exchange rate challenges continue, those consumables will be going up at a faster rate than if it is being produced locally. Because if it is produced locally, what it means that yes, some of the ingredients of the production locally may have to be imported, but not all of it will be in the exchange, the foreign forex. So I think that what we need to do, and these are things that can be produced locally. The consumables are things that can be produced locally. We should go in for equipment that allows consumables that can be bought in the open market. But if you go in for this same kind of clothes, even if they give you 200 machines for free, because the consumables are priced in a way, indirectly, Evans, to be able to recoup the cost of that machine, you end up with this kind of situation. That is why others are able to charge lower rate and Korle-Bu cannot, because they are able to buy their consumables in the open market. So we should encourage government to support local pharmaceutical companies to produce these consumables. That's one of our best bets. Aside that, let us also be mindful. Most hospitals around the world, especially just like universities, they have endowment fund where they set it so properly that private individuals are willing and ready to put their money in. Today, the minister's statement said that there's a particular company that supports about 1 million every quarter to support the dialysis center. Sometimes the challenge that a lot of the private sector have in donating money is that they don't know how these monies are run. So if you set up a very proper, well-structured endowment fund in these facilities, people will donate, and you can use that to also support this kind of treatment. Lastly, in my view, look, we must look at the law in the health insurance. The Health Insurance Authority Act allows us to pay premium in cascading. That's different premium for different services. So I can, now that Evans, you are working, you are healthy, you can choose to be paying a certain premium. That will allow you, may God forbid, and may God even perish the thought, should you have any of this kidney problem or any other thing, you will be covered. So when you structure it that way, you take some segment of the society of the financial challenges, then you limit the number, then you'll be able to deal with it. But if you lump everyone, what it means that if you're not careful, it will get to a time, even when you have money, you'll not be able to have the service. And that's what we should be mindful of. Because remember, the WHO have empirical research work that has been done to show, since we introduced health insurance in our country, the cost of medicine has gone higher than the sub-region. Simply because if the Health Insurance Authority want to price paracetamol, and they say, because we want to do it for the next 2 years, currently it is 5 cedis, so let's price it at 7 cedis so that in the next 2 years, we are not going to review the prices. Immediately, almost everybody in the market there jump to 7 cedis. Instead of leaving it at 5 cedis, they will just jump it to 7 cedis. That is what you will do. If you joke, if they bring it in Parliament, we hurriedly say, give Korle-Bu, say maybe 800 to charge. Then Konfanoti will change its price to 800. Bekum will change its. The private facilities who are charging currently between 500 to say 800 will move it to 1,500. Then before you realize, you are now beginning to price it outside the range of much larger group. Because currently maybe some people are able to do the private because they can go where it is 500, where maybe it's 800. If you do this and you joke, and that of Korle-Bu and Konfanoti, the government facilities go so high to say 800,000, you are going to push the private sector to go to 2,000 and above. And then that will mean that all those other people who could originally afford to go and do that of the private sector 1,500 will now have to now come back to the government side. And you compound the problem.
On the contract, did you get assurance that you get to see it? Did the minister say?
Well, we are insisting, and I can assure you, well, I even though I'm no longer in the leadership, but I want to believe that those of us in the minority caucus will insist that let's see the contract before we even talk about the review of the fees and charges.
Okay. Thank you very much, Muntaka Mubarak. Thank you very much, Kwame Sapasiru, for that. This is the space we're watching pretty closely. That's it for Top Story. Newsnight starts in a minute.